Hello, my dear listeners. I'm Abigail, and thank you for joining me once again. Tonight, I'd like to share a story about Aphrodite's powerful charisma, a force so enchanting that it reached a small, remote village and captured the heart of a humble fisherman who fell under her spell. So, let's begin. The world had not yet known beauty like hers. On the morning of her birth, the sea was unusually calm, as if the waters themselves held their breath in anticipation. The dawn sky glowed in soft hues of lavender and rose, casting a gentle shimmer on the waves that lapped at the shores of Cyprus. And then, from the foam where the sea met the sky, she emerged, a figure both delicate and powerful, a vision that would shape love and beauty for eternity. Aphrodite, goddess of love, was born not from mortal womb, nor by the hand of any earthly mother. She came from the essence of the sea itself, crafted by the mysterious forces that ruled the ancient waters. As her form took shape, each droplet of seawater seemed to sparkle and swirl around her, casting an ethereal light that bathed the island of Cyprus in a heavenly glow. The gods were the first to sense her arrival. On Mount Olympus, Zeus, the king of gods, paused from his morning deliberations, his usually steely gaze softening as he felt the pulse of beauty entering the world. Hera, his queen, caught his glance, and for a rare moment the two shared a silent understanding. A new presence was here, a force that would move mortals and gods alike in ways they had never experienced. In the mortal realm, the earth itself seemed to respond. Flowers bloomed in places where seeds had never been sown, and a gentle breeze swept through the groves and olive trees, carrying with it a fragrance that enchanted every creature that inhaled it. Birds sang sweeter, rivers sparkled brighter, and even the mountains seemed less stern in the glow of her arrival. Clothed in nothing but the shimmering foam from which she rose, Aphrodite stepped onto the shores of Cyprus, her feet leaving no mark in the sand. She was beautiful beyond words, with golden hair cascading like sunlight over her shoulders and eyes as deep and changeable as the sea itself. But beyond her beauty, there was an aura about her, a radiant warmth that wrapped around her like a cloak, both inviting and intoxicating. As she took her first steps, she noticed the flowers springing up in her path, delicate lilies and roses in shades of red and white, as if the earth itself sought to honor her. Aphrodite knelt, brushing her fingers over a rose petal, feeling the softness of its touch. She knew, even in that first moment, that she was destined to be more than a mere goddess. She was born to move hearts, to stir desires, to awaken love in a world that had known only the steel of war and the cold indifference of fate. In her heart, she already sensed the power she held, though she did not yet know how it would shape the lives of men and gods alike. Aphrodite wandered along the shores of Cyprus, her every step leaving an invisible trail of beauty that transformed the landscape around her. As she moved, a gentle, warm breeze followed, as if the wind itself sought to brush against her skin and carry her presence across the world. She sensed as she walked that this island was to be her birthplace, her sanctuary. Yet her spirit reached far beyond it, yearning to touch lives and awaken hearts beyond these shores. Above her, on Mount Olympus, the gods watched. They were drawn to her like moths to a flame, captivated by the radiance of her form and the allure of her presence. Each god felt a stirring within, a whisper of desire that seemed to awaken something ancient and powerful in their souls. Among those most entranced was Ares, the god of war. The son of Zeus and Hera, Ares was known for his fierce temper and his insatiable hunger for conflict. Yet, as he watched Aphrodite from afar, his heart beat not with the thrill of battle, but with something softer, something foreign, a longing that unsettled him. "Who is she?" he murmured to himself, his voice barely audible amidst the roaring fires of his war chamber. Zeus, who had sensed Ares' turmoil, appeared beside him. The king of gods looked upon Aphrodite with a mixture of admiration and caution. She is Aphrodite, born of the sea foam, destined to be the goddess of love and beauty. Her power will not be like ours. It will be something even we must respect. Ares scoffed, trying to mask his fascination with bravado. A goddess of love. What place does love have in the world of gods and war? Zeus gave him a knowing look. More than you might think, my son. Love is a force neither shield nor sword can withstand. You would do well to remember that. Ares frowned, but his gaze remained fixed on Aphrodite, who now knelt by the shore, her hands trailing through the water, her reflection shimmering like stardust. The sight of her stirred something deep within him, a desire not born of conquest, but of awe. A need to be near her, to feel her gaze upon him, to see if her touch could soothe even the most violent of souls. But Ares was not the only one captivated. Far across the mortal realm, men and women alike felt the ripples of her presence in their hearts, though they did not know the source. Farmers paused in their fields, feeling a warmth in their chests that reminded them of distant, forgotten dreams. Warriors in training lowered their swords, feeling a strange softness where once there was only the edge of steel. Even poets, who had no words to describe what they felt, turned to the heavens, their voices lifted in songs that celebrated beauty and longing. Yet it was not only those with hardened hearts who sensed her presence. Among the mortals there were those whose spirits were open and whose hearts were gentle, who felt Aphrodite's arrival as a call, a beckoning to something greater, something transcendent. Aphrodite's presence had begun to ripple across the mortal realm, though few understood the force behind their newfound desires and longings. As she wandered Cyprus, the island bloomed in her wake, transforming into a paradise that reflected her own beauty. It was not long before word spread of the divine woman who roamed the shore, her presence like a dream made real. Curious travelers, poets, and wanderers from neighboring lands felt an inexplicable pull to this enchanted place, each hoping to catch a glimpse of the goddess. Among them was a young fisherman named Iason, whose spirit was gentle and whose heart had never known true desire. He lived a humble life in a quiet village by the sea, spending his days casting nets and his nights watching the stars, lost in thoughts of beauty and wonder. When tales of Aphrodite reached his ears, he felt a calling unlike anything he had ever known. A voice deep within, urging him to seek her. The sea had always been Iason's companion. Growing up in a small fishing village on the eastern coast of Cyprus, he had spent countless hours beside it, watching the waves rise and fall, his spirit moving with their gentle rhythm. He knew the sea in all its moods, the tranquil hush of dawn, the restless whisper of night, the fierce roars that came with winter storms. Yet nothing he had known before compared to what he felt now, a yearning that seemed to rise with the tide, filling him with a restlessness he couldn't explain. It all began with the stories, tales of a divine figure who had appeared on the western shores of Cyprus, her beauty beyond mortal comprehension, her presence bringing flowers where none had bloomed before. They said she was born of the sea, rising from the foam like a vision. Some called her a goddess, others an enchantress, but all agreed on one thing. She was not of this world. Iason had listened to these stories with the skepticism of a fisherman whose life was grounded in the hard work of nets and tides. But there was something in the way people spoke of her, a reverence, a sense of wonder that clung to their words like the salt of the sea. Despite himself, he felt drawn to this figure, as if an invisible thread was pulling him toward her. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of pink and gold, Iason stood on the shore, staring out at the endless expanse of water. He took a deep breath, filling his lungs with the salty air, and closed his eyes. In that moment, he allowed himself to believe, to imagine what it would be like to see her, to feel her presence. When he opened his eyes, he made a decision. He would travel to the western shores of Cyprus, to the place where the goddess had been seen. He knew it was a foolish journey. He had his duties, his fishing, his family to consider. But the pull was too strong to ignore, a voice within him that whispered of things beyond his understanding. The next morning, he set off. The journey was not an easy one. It took him through rugged hills and dense forests, along winding paths that seemed to stretch endlessly before him. But with each step, he felt the pull grow stronger, a sense of anticipation building within him. He didn't know what he would find, but he knew that his life would not be the same once he reached his destination. After days of travel, Iason reached the western shores of Cyprus. It was dusk, the sky painted with the last fiery embers of sunset, and the air held a stillness that seemed to press upon him, heightening his senses. The sea stretched before him, dark and vast, and there, on the shore, he saw her. Aphrodite stood at the edge of the waves, her figure bathed in the soft, silvery light of the rising moon. Her hair cascaded like golden threads down her back, catching the moon's glow, and her skin seemed to shimmer as if woven from the very light of the heavens. She was looking out over the water, her expression serene, and as he drew closer, he felt a presence so profound, it was as though the very essence of love had taken shape before him. Iason's breath caught in his throat. He wanted to move closer to see her face more clearly, but his feet were rooted to the spot, as if afraid that one wrong step would break the spell and she would vanish. His heart raced, each beat echoing the crash of the waves against the shore. Finally, he found the courage to speak, his voice barely a whisper. Are you Aphrodite?" She turned slowly, her gaze meeting his with a calm intensity that sent a shiver down his spine. Her eyes, deep and fathomless as the sea, held a warmth that seemed to reach into his very soul. For a moment, she regarded him in silence, and then, with a gentle smile, she spoke. "I am," she said, her voice as soft as the evening breeze, yet filled with a power that resonated within him. "And you? You are a traveler, one who has come far to find something he does not yet understand." Iason's face flushed. I don't know what brought me here. I only know that I felt I had to come." Aphrodite's smile deepened, a glimmer of amusement in her eyes. Love is often like that, a force unseen yet irresistible. It pulls at the heart, guiding it to places unknown, to possibilities yet dreamed. She stepped toward him, her movements graceful, as if she were gliding rather than walking. With each step, Iason felt his heart quicken, his breath catch. When she was close enough for him to see every delicate line of her face, the curve of her lips, the light in her eyes, he felt as though he were standing at the edge of an abyss, ready to fall. "Tell me," she said, her gaze never wavering, "what is it that you seek?" Son struggled to find the words, his mind swirling with thoughts and emotions he couldn't put into language. I don't know. I came here because I felt I must. Because I've never felt, I've never seen." He trailed off, unable to capture the depth of his longing. Aphrodite's expression softened, her hand reaching out to touch his face. Her fingers were cool and smooth, like the touch of the sea on a warm day, and as her hand rested against his cheek, he felt a peace settle over him, a calm that soothed his restless heart. "Love is not always something to be understood," she murmured, her voice low and soothing. "It is something to be felt, to be experienced. It lives in the spaces between words, in the quiet moments shared, in the way two souls recognize each other without needing explanation." Iason closed his eyes, his mind overwhelmed by her presence, by the gentleness of her touch. In that moment, he felt as though he had found something he had been searching for his entire life, a feeling that filled him with both joy and a profound sadness, knowing that such beauty could never truly be his. When he opened his eyes, he saw her watching him with a tenderness that was both comforting and heartbreaking. He reached out, his fingers trembling as they brushed against her hand, and for a moment he allowed himself to believe that this moment could last forever. "Aphrodite," he whispered, his voice filled with a yearning he could not contain. "I don't know what this is, what I feel, but I know that it's real. I know that it matters." She smiled, her gaze warm and knowing. "Then hold on to it, Iason," Let it be a light within you, a flame that guides you. Love is the most beautiful gift we can give, the most powerful force we can wield. Do not be afraid to let it fill you." They stood in silence, their hands entwined, the waves crashing gently at their feet. For that brief, perfect moment, the world felt whole, as if nothing existed beyond the touch of her hand, the warmth of her gaze, the softness of her voice. And in that silence, Iason felt a peace he had never known, a sense of belonging that filled every corner of his heart. But as the first light of dawn began to break over the horizon, casting a golden glow across the water, he knew that this moment would soon end, that the goddess before him was not his to keep. She was a force of nature, a presence that belonged to the world, to all who sought her, to all who dared to love. As the sun rose, casting its light over the shore, Aphrodite's form began to fade, her figure dissolving into the light, her essence blending with the morning breeze. Iason felt a pang of sorrow, but he knew that he had been given a gift, a memory that would stay with him forever, a love that would live on in his heart. And as he stood alone on the shore, the sea stretching out before him, he whispered a quiet promise to himself, a vow to honor the love he had felt, to carry it with him always, and to let it guide him in all that he did. For though Aphrodite was gone, her presence remained, a warmth in his heart, a whisper in his soul. And as he turned to leave, he knew that he was forever changed, that he would never again be the man he had once been. Iason returned to his village changed, though he could not fully grasp the depth of that change. Every morning as he cast his nets into the sea, every night as he watched the stars emerge, he felt her presence, like a warm, invisible cloak around his heart. The other villagers noticed his quietness, the distant look in his eyes, yet none could guess the reason. His heart was bound by a secret, an encounter so rare and profound that he scarcely believed it himself. But love, even the quiet kind that lives within memories, does not remain hidden for long. Like ripples in a pond, the effect of Iason's encounter with Aphrodite began to spread, touching those around him in ways neither he nor they could fully understand. Days turned to weeks, yet the memory of Aphrodite lingered in Iason's heart like the warmth of the sun on a winter day. Her touch, her voice, her presence, these remained imprinted on his soul, a quiet ache that he both cherished and feared. As he moved through his daily life, the world seemed somehow softer, more beautiful, as if touched by her essence. Every glimmer of light on the waves, every gentle breeze that brushed against his skin, reminded him of her. One evening, as he sat by the shore, gazing out at the vast expanse of sea, he was joined by a familiar figure, Althea, a young woman from his village, who had known Iason since childhood. She approached him quietly, her eyes filled with a tenderness that had always lingered unspoken between them. "Iason," she began, her voice soft, "you've changed." He turned to her, surprised by the directness of her words. "Have I?" She nodded, her gaze unwavering. "You've always been quiet, thoughtful. But Now, it's as if you're carrying something, a secret or perhaps a sorrow. I see it in your eyes. Iason looked away, his heart aching with the weight of what he could not share. It's nothing. Althea? Just a memory, something that happened while I was away. Althea's expression softened. You don't have to tell me if you don't wish to, but if it burdens you, know that I am here to listen. For a moment, Iason was tempted to tell her everything, to share the wonder and pain of his encounter with the goddess. But how could he explain something so extraordinary, so beyond mortal understanding? How could he put into words the beauty and sorrow of knowing a love that could never be his? Instead, he offered her a gentle smile. Thank you. Althea, your friendship means more to me than I can say. They sat together in silence, the waves crashing softly at their feet. Althea leaned her head against his shoulder, and for a brief moment, Iason allowed himself to imagine a different life. A life where he could give his heart fully, without the shadow of Aphrodite's memory haunting him. But love, he knew, was not so easily tamed. Like the sea, it was vast, boundless, and often beyond his control. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting the sky in hues of orange and pink, Iason felt a stirring in the air, a gentle breeze that carried with it a familiar fragrance, a scent he knew too well. His heart quickened, his pulse racing as he felt her presence once more. Turning away from Althea, he rose to his feet, his gaze fixed on the distant horizon. And there, in the fading light, he saw her, Aphrodite, standing at the water's edge, her figure bathed in the soft glow of dusk. Althea noticed his sudden stillness, her gaze following his, but she saw nothing, only the empty shore and the endless expanse of sea. Iason, she whispered, a note of confusion in her voice. What is it? What do you see? He could not answer her. His heart was torn, caught between the mortal life he knew and the divine presence that called to him. He took a step forward, his feet moving of their own accord, drawn to the goddess as a moth to a flame. Aphrodite's gaze met his, her eyes filled with a sorrow that mirrored his own. She did not speak, but he felt her voice within him, a silent plea that resonated in his soul. Do not forget, Iason, her voice whispered, a haunting melody that lingered in the air, Though we are worlds apart, my love is yours to carry always. And then, as quickly as she had appeared, she was gone, her form dissolving into the twilight like a dream. Iason stood there, his heart heavy with the weight of her words. He felt Althea's hand on his arm, her touch gentle but filled with concern. Iason, she murmured, her voice barely a whisper. What is it that holds you so? Why do you look at the sea with such sorrow? He turned to her, his gaze filled with a sadness she could not understand. Althea, there are things in this world, wonders, mysteries, that defy all reason, Sometimes we encounter something so beautiful, so beyond our comprehension, that it leaves us forever changed. Althea's expression softened, her eyes filled with a quiet understanding. I may not know what you've seen, Iason, but I know that whatever it is, it has touched you deeply, and though it pains me to see you so, I will not ask you to forget. Sometimes love means holding on, even when it cannot be. Iason looked at her, gratitude filling his heart. In that moment, he saw Althea for who she truly was, a friend, a companion, and perhaps, in another life, a love he could have cherished. But fate, it seemed, had woven a different path for him, one that led him to the shores of Cyprus and into the embrace of a goddess. As night fell over the village, Iason knew that his life would never be the same. He would carry Aphrodite's love with him always, a bittersweet memory that would haunt his dreams and shape his destiny. But he also knew that, in the end, love was not about possession or desire. It was about connection, about the bonds that tied him to the world, to the people he cared for, and to the goddess who had shown him a glimpse of something greater. And as he looked out at the sea, he whispered a quiet prayer, a promise to honor the love he had known, to carry it with him always, and to live his life with the grace and courage that Aphrodite had awakened in his heart. Iason returned to the village, carrying the weight of his encounter with Aphrodite like a treasured secret wrapped tightly around his heart. Days blended into each other, and though he resumed his daily routines, casting nets, mending sails, sharing meals with the other fishermen, the presence of the goddess lingered within him. He moved through the world like a man under a spell, his eyes carrying the distant look of someone who had glimpsed another realm, a beauty too profound to describe. As the seasons changed, Ison's life wove itself back into the quiet rhythms of village life, but his heart remained restless, a part of him yearning for something beyond the mortal world. Each night, he would walk down to the secluded cove where he had last seen Aphrodite, sitting on the rocks and watching the waves in silence, hoping for a sign of her presence. The villagers had grown accustomed to his solitary habits, and though some whispered about the strange change that had come over him, they left him to his solitude, respecting the mystery that surrounded him. One evening, as Iason sat by the shore, lost in thought, he was joined once more by Althea. She approached him quietly, her steps barely audible over the sound of the waves, and sat beside him, her gaze fixed on the distant horizon. "Iason," she said softly, her voice filled with gentle concern, "you have been so distant lately, even from those who care for you. It is as if your heart is somewhere else." He turned to her, his expression unreadable. "I am here, Althea. My heart belongs to this place, to these shores." She shook her head, a sad smile tugging at the corners of her lips. "No, Iason, I have known you long enough to see that something has changed. It is as if you carry a burden too heavy for words." For a moment, Iason considered telling her everything, sharing the secret that weighed upon his soul, but he knew that no words could capture the depth of what he felt, the beauty and sorrow of his encounter with Aphrodite. Instead, he took her hand, holding it gently, his gaze fixed on the sea. "Althea," he murmured, his voice barely a whisper, "there are things in this world that cannot be understood, things that defy all reason. I have seen something beautiful, something beyond my reach, and though it fills my heart, it also leaves it aching." She looked at him, her eyes filled with a quiet understanding. "Then let me share this burden with you. Iason, I may not understand the source of your sorrow, but I can be here beside you as you carry it." They sat together in silence, their hands entwined, the waves crashing softly at their feet. In that quiet moment, Iason felt a sense of peace, a fleeting comfort that reminded him of the gentler human connections that anchored him to this world. He knew that his love for Aphrodite would remain a part of him, a secret he would carry always, but Althea's presence brought a warmth that soothed the ache in his heart. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting the sky in shades of orange and pink, Iason felt a sense of closure, as if he were finally able to lay his sorrow to rest. He turned to Althea, a soft smile gracing his lips. "Thank you, Althea," he said, his voice filled with quiet gratitude. "You have been a true friend, and I am grateful for your kindness." She returned his smile, a glimmer of hope shining in her eyes. "You are never alone, Iason. Remember that." They remained on the shore until the stars appeared, their light casting a gentle glow over the sea. And as they sat together, Iason felt a sense of peace settle over him, a quiet acceptance of the path he had chosen. He knew that his love for Aphrodite would always be a part of him, but he also knew that he could find happiness in the simple moments of life, in the warmth of friendship, and in the beauty of the world around him. The days grew shorter, and a chill began to settle over the village as autumn deepened into winter. Iason's nightly walks became colder, his breath visible in the crisp air as he made his way to the secluded cove. Though he no longer expected to see Aphrodite, he felt her presence in the quiet stillness of the night, in the silvery light of the moon, and in the waves that whispered her name. It was as if the world around him held pieces of her, and he gathered them in his heart, treasuring each memory like a precious stone. In the village, Iason's quiet strength and gentle demeanor earned him the respect of his fellow fishermen. They admired his skill with the nets, his patience with the sea, and his uncomplaining acceptance of the hardships that came with the life of a fisherman. But though he had become a beloved figure in the community, there remained an air of mystery around him, a sense that he belonged to another world, a world that none of them could reach. Althea, too, sensed this distance, but she had accepted it as part of who he was. She had come to understand that Iason's heart was bound by something beyond her reach, a love so deep and pure that it transcended the boundaries of mortal life. And though it pained her to know that she could never fully share in that love, she found solace in their quiet moments together, in the warmth of his presence and the gentle way he looked at her, as if he saw the beauty in her soul. One evening, as they walked along the shore, Althea spoke, her voice soft and hesitant. "Iason, do you ever think of leaving this place? Of finding a life beyond the village?" He glanced at her, surprised by the question. "This is my home, Althea. The sea, the village, they are part of me." She nodded, a wistful smile playing on her lips. "I know. But sometimes I wonder if there is more for you out there, beyond the horizon, a life that could bring you the happiness you seek." Iason was silent for a moment, his gaze drifting out to the distant waves. "I have found happiness here, Althea. It may not be the life I once dreamed of, but it is a good life, a life filled with meaning." She looked at him, her eyes filled with quiet longing. "And yet I can't help but feel that there is a part of you that is still searching, still reaching for something beyond this world." He met her gaze, his expression thoughtful. "Perhaps you are right, but I have come to accept that some things are beyond my reach. I have found peace in that acceptance and in the love I carry with me." They continued walking in silence, the only sound the gentle lapping of the waves against the shore. Althea's heart ached with the knowledge that Iason's love would always be bound to a goddess, a presence that lingered in his soul like a haunting melody. But she also knew that her own love for him was something pure, something that did not demand or possess, but simply existed like the steady beat of her heart. As they reached the edge of the village, Althea turned to him, a tear slipping down her cheek. "Iason, I want you to know that I will always be here for you, no matter where life takes you. My heart is yours, even if you cannot hold it." He took her hand, his gaze filled with gratitude. "Thank you, Althea. Your kindness and understanding mean more to me than I can say." They stood there, bathed in the soft glow of the moon, their hands entwined, two souls bound by a love that was both tender and tragic. And in that moment, Iason felt a sense of peace, a quiet acceptance of the life he had chosen and the love he carried with him. But as the days turned to weeks and the chill of winter deepened, Iason began to feel a new restlessness, a stirring in his heart that reminded him of the longing he had once felt for Aphrodite. It was as if the goddess was calling to him once more, her presence a gentle whisper in the back of his mind, urging him to seek something beyond the life he had known. One night, as he lay awake, staring at the stars through the window of his small cottage, he made a decision. He would return to the place where he had first seen Aphrodite, the shores of Cyprus where the goddess had risen from the sea. He knew that this journey would be different from his first, for he no longer sought her presence with the desperation of a man in love. Instead, he felt a quiet need to honor her memory, to seek a sense of closure, to find a way to carry her love with him in peace. The following morning, Iason set out on his journey, his heart filled with a sense of purpose. He traveled through rugged landscapes and quiet villages, his thoughts focused on the goddess who had changed his life in ways he could not fully understand. And as he walked, he felt her presence growing stronger, as if the very air around him carried traces of her essence. When he finally reached the shores of Cyprus, the place where he had first glimpsed Aphrodite's beauty, he felt a surge of emotion, a bittersweet mixture of joy and sorrow. He stood at the edge of the water, his gaze fixed on the horizon, and he whispered her name, his voice carried by the wind. Aphrodite. The waves lapped gently at his feet, as if in response, and he felt a warmth wash over him, a comforting presence that wrapped around him like a gentle embrace. He closed his eyes, his heart filled with gratitude, and he spoke, his voice soft but steady. Thank you, Aphrodite, for the love you have given me, for the beauty you have shown me. I will carry it with me always, a light in my heart that will never fade. He stood there in silence, his mind filled with memories of their time together, and he felt a sense of peace, a quiet acceptance of the path he had chosen. He knew that his love for her would always be a part of him, a memory that would live on in his heart. But he also knew that he could move forward, that he could find happiness in the simple moments of life. As the sun began to set, casting a golden glow over the water, Iason turned to leave, his heart filled with a sense of closure. But as he walked away, he felt a gentle breeze at his back, a soft whisper that carried her voice, a final message that filled his heart with warmth. To farewell, Iason. May love guide you always. And with those words, he knew that he was free, that he could carry her love with him as a cherished memory, a gift that would never fade.